yeah, thankful for the way that it turned out.
Can I ask you, are you more or less confident in the 49ers moving forward after that game? And has your reaction, like, because today is 2 days after the game, so maybe your reaction is different than you felt right after the game. The reason I'm asking this is we've kind of throughout the season discussed it like the 49ers only win one way, and that's by kind of taking an early lead, and or even if they don't have an early lead, taking a lead and then extending it and kind of blowing the other team out. They've really not been in these kind of gritty back and forth wins, especially this one. I mean, this was like, I don't know, like the Super Bowl is like this was one of the most stressful games I've watched in a really long time. I watched it with my best friend who's not a big football person, and I feel like she is now a football fan because she was like, oh my god, this is so intense. I was like, not every game is like this, but what I was saying though is I think all year we've kind of wanted to see if the 49ers could come through in this situation. They've gotten a lot of criticism for potentially having the opportunity to do that in their very few losses, and aside from the Browns game, which was a missed field goal, which we'll get to again. But having them overcome that hump, because it was kind of like a game of narrative crushers, right? But for some reason, even though you would think, okay, that makes the fan base more comfortable, right? And it makes, I would think, prior to this game, if someone came up to me and said it was a gritty back and forth win and the 49ers pulled through, they won at the end, I'd be like, wow, like I've been wondering if they could do that. I figured they would either have to do that in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl. Like, I feel even better about this team. But that was not my takeaway. I walked away feeling, I was like, they did not play their best football, and they must play better to continue to advance to even get to the Super Bowl, but definitely in the Super Bowl against those AFC teams. And I don't want to count out the lines. Yeah, I think if I was to answer my question, am I more or less confident? I'm probably around the same, but like that's the 2 days later version of me.
Yeah,
The after the game version of me was like, the world is on fire. Brock Purdy can't be the franchise quarterback because he can't throw in the rain. Kyle Shanahan loses his goddamn mind in big games. Where the hell is Ambry Thomas? Why is the old one here? We did not. What's that that song? Like the old one hung up. Never mind. I'll use references that I understand next time. George Kittle with a rare dropped pass on that final drive, which was really good. But yeah, I don't know. I had mixed emotions, and I feel like I've talked to a lot of different fans and people who talk about the game, and depending on maybe if you're like a glass half full person or not, you have a different response to that. So how did you, can you answer how Stephanie right after the game felt in regards to this question? And then if it's different now, can you maybe talk about your thought process in between that time?
I'll say how I felt watching the game. There was like a bit of a panic, but right after the game, I was just happy that they won, and I don't think I really cared how they won as long as they got it done. I think now, like a couple days later, being level headed, like I do try to be. I think that it depends how you look at it. Like now with a little more perspective and being able to say, well, yeah, this team did answer a lot of questions actually. Uh, they checked a lot of boxes for us that they hadn't in all of the regular season. They just hadn't been in those situations. And so I think it's good to know that if Brock Purdy has a bad game, he could have a game-winning drive, and I think we already knew that because of the Browns game, right? he
Yeah.
already he already
Yeah.
did that. It didn't result
It's
in the
funny,
win.
like people do dismiss that. Like it's so funny,
Because
like
of the outcome.
even smart people who sorry, that was maybe insulting. Even people who analyze games, like I would consider myself someone who can be reasonable and knows that like quarterback wins aren't a stat, but just like they say this about this is such a funny example, but about like Instagram, a lot of people who like edit their photos, even if you, or magazines, even if you like as a rational person are like, oh, like these people are edited because this is a magazine, so the lighting has changed, like whatever. When human brains just see it, you like kind of forget that. Like your automatic reaction isn't like, oh, don't compare myself to this person because this is like an edited image. You just like
Mhm.
compare, like you kind of forget about that. So I think when I think of Brock Purdy's ability to come back and the game-winning drives, a lot of times I also discount that Browns game. Even
Mhm.
though I know if that was a win, I feel like he would have already had that credit. But you're right, that should be counted.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, kind of like how Sean said, shout out Sean,
Yeah.
my friend in the comments. I mean, he pretty much says like he's confident they could get it done, but not delusional. Like, yeah, the 49er and I'm sure the 49ers are thinking the same way. Like they can't come out of uh they can't go into the NFC Championship game looking and playing the same way they did to start against the Packers. Right. And I think that's the part that's like a little disappointing, and maybe the part where, some people might not feel as confident because we were expecting a lot more, coming out of or going into that game. We were expecting the 49ers
Yeah.
to demolish the Packers and put a
Yeah.
stamp
Like
on
our
the game
expectations
really
were high.
quickly. And because that didn't happen, like I could see why there could be some panic, and you kind of wonder, is this the same team that we were confident about like all season? Um, but I don't know. I guess the perspective counts. I like to think that they're not gonna come out like that against the Lions, and
I
who
feel that with
knows,
you.
maybe.
Do you think that the 20 days, off did I know some people played for a half or whatever, but do you think that the two, rest weeks did kind of affect them? When I was watching the Ravens Texans, I was kind of expecting that style of game
Mhm,
from the
mhm,
49ers, like maybe a slow start and then a pull away. Um Obviously the pull away wasn't there, but it does feel like no, from the coaches to offensively to defensively to the quarterback. Also considering, we can talk about the rain later, but just potentially that there is something to a little bit of rust factor. Like I don't know if you agree, but I think when you think about the Ravens, I think that the Ravens are going to come out playing how they did in the second half of the game against the Texans next week. Like to me, it would be fair to say that they came out rusty and that I anticipate that they won't start out like that next week. And so I'm wondering, when it comes to the 49ers, do you think that maybe there's a similar thing and they'll return to maybe their mean, because the style of game that they played against Green Bay isn't how they normally play. So
mhm.
is it more, I don't know a better word for this, but is it more like fan behavior for me to think that they're gonna, because I kind of anticipate they're gonna play more of their style of game, whether that's just less penalties, smarter game plan. Brock Purdy, I mean, he had a really down game, and those are more rare for him. And I think that
Yeah.
it would make sense to anticipate them to all play better. I'm not saying for sure they're going to win, but just a better game than that, because the offense in general and defense kind of just looked out of rhythm the whole game.
And that's where I think the rain does play a factor, because I think had it not been raining, you probably see Brock Purdy settle in a little bit quicker because he'd feel more confident, throwing the football. But I think the ball just comes out a little bit different when the ball is wet. Like that, he was missing open guys and he was inaccurate like for three quarters in this game, and it was uncharacteristic for him, right?
I agree.
So I feel like rust plus rain is not a good mix. It was definitely not a good
No.
mix for Brock Purdy, for even the defense, because the defense was slipping on the field. I remember like there was a play Mooney Ward slipped and
Yeah.
the receiver was like wide open. And like what other time would Mooney Ward like give up a play like that? Like
Yeah.
he'd at
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
contest it.
What
Um
is Do you think Kyle Shanahan will, like, I know he's been asked this before, so this is not like a new question that I've had, but he has talked about not practicing with wet footballs, kind of not wanting to address weather conditions at all. He thinks that it gets in the quarterback's head, it can get in the player's head. Um, the players were not prepared to play in the rain. They literally didn't even have the right cleats on. This was not a problem for Green Bay. To me, that is an area of opportunity for growth from Kyle Shanahan, and maybe Brock Purdy himself. If Kyle isn't going to have you practice with wet footballs and you know it's going to rain, stay after practice and practice with wet footballs. I don't know. Like, not that that should be on him. I do think that that probably falls under the coaching umbrella. But do you think that we'll see an adjustment there? Now, it doesn't look like it's going to rain coming into this Sunday, and the Super Bowl's played in a dome. But just moving forward under this regime, rain games are an issue. And, it rains sometimes. And, like, this was supposed to be a home game, home field advantage, and Green Bay looked way more prepared. They were not slipping all over the field in the same way that the 49ers were.
And Green
Jordan
Bay,
Love was not, yeah.
Green Bay gets like rain, sleet, snow. They see it all.
Yeah.
So like, even Matt LaFleur, the broadcast quoted him saying like, this is nothing for us. And it showed. So I think their equipment team was probably way more prepared for the rain than the 49ers were. I thought it was great. I mean, they showed on the broadcast too, the 49ers
Them
sideline had
changing,
all
right?
those shoes lined up for guys to change into. And maybe, I don't know, like, does that
But,
show
like, my thing is, like,
that?
why would you not, like, you should already have had those on. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
eh,
played soccer growing up, and, like, there's certain shoes that you wear when it's gonna rain. Like, there would never be an opportunity where you would change in the middle of the game. You would have just been
right,
wearing those, like, if you even if it's, like, not 100%, like, "Oh, it might rain? Oh, okay, you
yeah,
can't play unless you have your rain cleats on."
right. And so, like, I mean, I don't really
That's an
know.
NFL football team. Like, what do you
I don't
mean?
know what they went into the game wearing, so I don't know, like, how much I can judge, but, I mean, it was definitely an issue, and it seemed like it was less of an issue after the half, so whatever adjustments they made then as
Yeah.
far as the equipment goes, definitely helped. But, yeah, I mean, would I like Kyle Shanahan to have the team practice in wet conditions or with a wet ball? Yeah. I mean, but I see what he
Yeah,
says
Steph, go
too,
down
like,
there to Santa Clara, you tell 'em.
yeah, I'll just dump the ball in a bucket or something. But I mean, I see what he says too
Doesn't
about
this
it
girl
getting
have
in
a
the
podcast? How do you get in our practice arena? Just take the wet football. Okay. All right. She seems really
but
aggressive.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I would like Kyle to work on that, but at the same time, yeah, if Brock feels that's something he needs to work on, then he has all the time in the world after practice if he wanted to do that. And I'm just not sure if he does. Like, I don't know whether he does or not, so can't judge
Can
Brock
I
on that.
can I ask you if this continues, and then this is maybe this is an off-season topic, so we don't have to spend too long on it. But if this is something that continues, because that it seems fair for me to call it a pattern that Brock Purdy struggles in the rain. We literally saw him I need to throw the ball down the field, put it in his offhand, wipe his, I know,
Yeah,
Warren Sharp
that's
wiped his
crazy.
hand. Like,
That's crazy.
remember the people that were like crushing the throwing mechanics? Do you know what they don't teach you mid throw the ball to wipe your hand off? I mean, like, I guess I'm glad that he, instead of, it would have been better, wouldn't have been better to just, have a slippery hand and throw it backwards. But I don't know. Like, I feel like this is such a taboo even question, but it does feel like, can you have a franchise quarterback that struggles that much in the rain? But although